Welcome to Wednesday's Word of Wisdom. Today we're going to be talking about testing your thoughts. Come on back and see what we've got for you. And we're back. I want to read to you this devotional that I read some time ago, and it just really stuck with me. It says, "The thoughts you keep in a loop determine the direction of your life." I want you to think about that. The thoughts that you keep in a loop determine the direction of your life. And that was actually a quote from a pastor. And that had me thinking, what are the thoughts that we think on a daily basis, right? There's some pervasive thoughts that we think every day, right? I can say, I get up and I say, I'm fearfully and I'm wonderfully made, right? That's a thought, right? And that's something I may say to myself every day. But what are some of the thoughts that you think every day? And I found this, in the devotional, it talks about this amazing statistics that says we have between 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Have you ever thought about what you were thinking? Oh my goodness, 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of thoughts. I didn't even recognize or realize that. And then when they break it down, that means that it's between 2,500 and 3,300 thoughts per hour. Oh my goodness. And I'm a person, right? I feel so convicted because I'm a person, I live inside my head. Ask David, I will get lost in my head, right? So I'm probably on the higher average end of that, right? The thoughts that I have a day, right? And then the devotion goes on to say, it would be great if our thoughts were all good, but many of them are negative and toxic. The good news is that we have a guide to help us test our thoughts. Philippians 4:8 is a great test as to whether or not we should think about something. The verse tells us to think about things that are true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, and worthy of praise.
All right. Now, for some of us, those numbers might really seem a little high, especially guys, because we kind of space out sometimes, but the numbers are there for a purpose. We don't really think about what we're thinking about a lot of times. Like, we get in a situation and we just let our thoughts just run wild. Case in point, especially men, when we're driving, we're trying to drive, we're trying to get somewhere, and someone pulls out in front of us and slows down. What thoughts go through your mind? Normally the first one is not a happy or good thought. Normally the first one is negative.
You know what I just thought about when you said that? I was like, that person is probably a jerk.
Okay, yeah, that's a thought. And even though that thought actually may be true about that person or about what they did, and it says to think on true things, we got to keep going in that verse, the other things. Because just because there might be something said about you that is true does not mean you need to think about it.
Right.
Like you get in a position at work and you're doing, in your mind, you think you're doing really well. Someone comes up and says, in their mind, you're not.
Right.
Which one are you going to think on?
Right.
For many of us, we think what other people say about us and not what God has said about us. So we have to be really careful about these other ones, the right, the pure, the lovely. And how do we do that? We have to know the Word of God. We have to be listening to the Spirit. Because those bad thoughts or negative thoughts that, like I said, they may be true in the moment or for somebody else to say, but they might not be what God has said is right or pure or lovely about us. So the Bible also says to think about what you are thinking about. So that means those numbers are going to double if we actually did that on a normal basis. And that's kind of hard. Because I'm sitting here watching TV and I've got to think about what I'm thinking about this TV and about everything else. It's a lot that we have to do. But there's one verse, and if you read our emails, I mentioned this. We have the mind of Christ. So that kind of helps us there. Not only do we have His Word, we have His mind in us when we have the Spirit in us. So that helps us to think the way that His Word says to think. Because He's not going to think the other ways.
Right.
His mind is going to think the way He tells us to.
Right.
So let us try to tap into that. Know that we have the mind of Christ. Know that He has given us a blueprint here of the things that we need to think about. And then start thinking about what you're thinking about. You might notice some patterns of thought that you might need to adjust.
Right.
And sometimes we might have to get rid of it totally because it's not what His Word has for us to think about.
Right. And in thinking about what David said, the example of, someone pulls out in front of us and the first thought, and my first thought was, man, this person's probably a jerk. But then as I was thinking about what I was thinking about, I thought about, well, what if this person's running late? What if this person, had something that happened to them in their morning that is causing them to rush, right? And then now that starts to reorient my thought process as to, hey, let me have some empathy and some compassion. And sometimes we're able to give it easily to others, but we don't give it to ourselves. We fall into the self-condemnation, right? And as David mentioned, what is the Lord saying about us? So definitely think about what you're thinking and submit those thoughts to the Lord as we have the mind of Christ to be able to reorient and test the thoughts to see, are these thoughts the thoughts that I should keep? And it will determine the direction that we go in. Until next time, God bless you and goodbye.